Welcome to, I think, maybe our first ever live CrimsonCast post-game football show. We decided to give this one a shot. Galen Clavio, Scott Caulfield, as we give you some instant reaction to Indiana's 38-28 victory in Miami over the Florida International Panthers, Jaguars. I forget what they are, but anyway, they
Panthers, Jaguars.
Panthers, yes. But Scott, Florida National lost. Indiana picks up their first victory on the season, and we got a lot to talk about here. We're not going to take a tremendous amount of time, but we are going to touch on some of the major points. A lot of good things for IU, some concerning things that hopefully they'll get a chance to work on. But let me get from you to start off with the thing that was the most interesting or stood out the most to you from this game.
That's a good question. The most interesting for me, it's Michael Penix. I mean, he looked great. Like, he looked really good, almost to the point that I know we've spent a lot of time talking about, he has 4 games and this is his redshirt year. But, to me, I was most intrigued that I'm actually happy that Allen kept him in, because there was a point in the third quarter where Florida International, he had his first series. FIU came back and scored and made it a 14-point game. And it's like, this is actually it was kind of an important offensive drive. And I will say Penix let him down. They scored a touchdown, which got called back on kind of a crappy pet call. And then he basically drove him down for a touchdown. He looked fantastic. Again, it's one game, don't want to get crazy, but to the point where I'm like, maybe we just go 4 years with him and don't do a red shirt. But for me, that was that was the most interesting. I guess on the negative side was a funky start where I had a fun text to you and our defense didn't look fantastic. I wouldn't say.
Yeah, no, I think my most interesting thing, mine would be Penix as well, but because that would be boring for the audience, I'm going to say mine was the overall performance that the defense put in. It was a very mixed bag. You did have the turnovers, and you have to like that. The takeaway, giveaway category, or whatever the heck they decide to call it, has been a real problem for IU the last couple of years. And, they were able to, I think they picked up, 2 fumble recoveries and an interception today. And I believe only gave the ball away once. There was that one interception by Dorian Hall, but still +2 for IU defensively. You do like to see that. What you don't like to see is that FIU really was gouging Indiana's defense in several different ways throughout the course of the game. It really wasn't until the very end that they were managing to slow FIU down. Yes, they were playing a lot of younger players, and that certainly had an impact. But the flip side of that is that it's a young defense. Like, it's not like, there's all these veterans that were not playing in this game. Like, that's your defense. And so you do have to like the takeaways, but they're going to have to get a lot better over the course of the next few games.
The thing I liked about, there's a lot of negative on the defense. The thing I liked was we had a couple of those kind of big plays we don't normally see. Like, we had a pick 6, which was nice. And then we had, after it was like, I think a 7-point game and Florida National's driving. And then we had we forced a fumble and got a recovery. And like, those are 2 kind of big defensive plays that we don't normally get. Like, normally we kind of get gouged and our defense never has kind of that big breakthrough play. So, on the plus side is you had a fumble that stopped, fumble recovery that stopped a big drive, and you had a pick 6. So, they had some of those big kind of momentum turning plays we don't normally see. Now they stopped doing it, but 2's not bad.
No, look, any sort of situation that you can get, good performance to some degree out of both sides of the ball, particularly on the road, against, frankly, a team that has given IU trouble over the course of the series that they've played against them. People look at the prior scores in this series, and you look at it and you say, IU, they beat them by 14, or they beat them by this or that. It's been really close. We mentioned this on the preview show a couple of days ago, but FIU was leading IU going into the fourth quarter in the game that they played at Miami the last time that these 2 matched up. So the fact that they were able to get control of the game, they never really put it out of reach, but they also, once they went on that run and they scored the 3 straight touchdowns in the first half, I think the closest that FIU got the rest of the way was 10. And even that was kind of it was a 10, but they still had a lot to do. They tried an onside kick. It didn't work. So, looking at the statistics.
An FIU team coached by Butch Davis. I'm not sure if you knew that. If you're watching the CBS Sports commentators, they
never
mentioned
showed
it.
him.
Oh, they showed him all the time. Are you kidding me?
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Every third word it felt like out of their mouth was about Butch Davis, Coach Butch Davis. Like it was just a lot of Butch.
I must have missed all the times I looked up at the screen. I never saw the Butch. I was thinking right as I was getting ready to go on. I was like, they didn't feel like they showed Butch Davis much, but I guess maybe I think I was psychologically tuning the broadcasters out, which I want to do a lot of times when it's on certain networks. Anyway,
the only thing I'll say before we get in the deep dive of the stats is it is bad. Like that end, just real quick. I don't want to get deep into it, but that end of the first half clock management by us was just absurdly bad, to the point that like normally, announcers on CBS Sports are kind of working their way up. Like they never say anything bad about anybody, but even they were like, that's really curious time management by Indiana there at the end. Like even they were kind of doing their best to, say what they can say versus, they don't normally come out and rip a college coach. But that was just bizarrely bad. Like I'm not even sure what our agenda was.
Well, look, here's the thing. Like at least I feel like IU won by 10. They scored 38 points, and yet you feel like they left 10 to 14 points on the board because they blew the last drive there. They get the fumble. Now Sykes picks it up. And then it was like they didn't know what they wanted to do on the last drive of the first half. At first, they looked like they wanted to move down the field. Then they wanted to play for a field goal. Then they started calling timeouts. There wasn't much consistency in the plan, and that's bad. And that's something that I think that even if Tom Allen's not calling the plays there as the head coach, you have to take responsibility for that and say, guys, what are we doing? And then they came out in the first possession of the second half, and they did basically nothing with that possession, either. Very conservative play calling. That said, at the end of the day, they still put 38 points on the board. So I'm not too concerned in the short term. It's just that we've seen that song and dance before from IU, not just under Tom Allen, but under Kevin Wilson as well. They've got to get better in those spots because that's the sort of high leverage possession situations that you end up getting the margin of victory. Like it could have been 45-28 or 48-28, and then you're not even worried down the last 8 or 9 minutes of the game.
I would say I'm a little more concerned about it. Like it's because that's going back to the end of last season, the Purdue game. Like that's what concerned you and I the most, is just how sloppy we still looked after an entire season. And to come out this first game, I know it's the first game of the year, but you have like an end of the half possession where it's like nobody seems to know what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish. We come out, like you said, with kind of conservative play calling, and then like we come out for a field goal. We have too many men on, like we line up with 12 guys. Just like there's still a lot of sloppy penalties that are just kind of silly, stupid things. And like I'm just concerned because that was my concern at the end of last year, was we looked a little bit sloppy and that lack of a better term, poorly coached. And so we come out this year and like still making 12 guys for a field goal. Like I know it's first game, but it's like that's the kind of shit I want to see tightened up.
I'm not too worried about that, simply because it is a young team, and we've known that from the beginning. And yes, there were those problems last year. There were fewer in this game than I thought there would be, and I thought overall, particularly the last drive of the game, I was impressed with how together IU was across the board. And so I think that there's something positive to be taken out of that. Let's go ahead and look at the stats real quick of this game for those who haven't seen them yet. It was an interesting game because I think the people we thought were going to show out maybe didn't, and people that we really weren't talking about too much coming into the game had great games. So, obviously Peyton Ramsey, to some degree, I feel like, the 2005 Indy 500, Danica Patrick had a great race, and everybody talked about how much of a great race she had. And I think she finished 4th, and Dan Weldon won the race. And, to some degree, you can kind of look at this situation with Ramsey and Penix. Like Penix came in and wowed everybody for 2 possessions, threw a touchdown pass, was 8 for 10 for 96 yards. You look at what Peyton Ramsey did.
He had a good game.
It was a really good game. 20 for 27, 156 yards, only 5.8 yards average on the completions, which is a bit of a concern, especially when you look at what Penix was able to do. He averaged almost 10 yards per completion, but 3 touchdowns, only the 1 interception, and was able to do stuff with his legs as well. Rushed 8 times for 36 yards.
And I know it was only 5 yards but his arm strength seemed to be a little bit up from last year.
It did. No,
and it's level, but he seems to have a little more arm strength than last year.
Not only his arm strength, but I thought his touch, his accuracy was better. The combination of the two was good. And so it's going to be interesting moving forward because I don't think Ramsey played a bad game. I do think you could tell in the play calling that there was a difference between what they were willing to ask Ramsey to do and what they were willing to ask Penix to do. I mean, I think Penix's second or third throw that they asked of him was I think it was like a go route or something where he had to throw a really hard ball. That was the ball to Fillier that ended up in the pass interference call. We didn't see Ramsey throw that sort of a ball all day, and so that's going to be the really interesting thing moving forward. Is Ramsey was very efficient. His completion percentage and his lack of mistakes overall, the one interception early on accepted, mirrored the positive aspects of his game from last year. But Penix looked, I was having Kellen Lewis flashbacks, for all the right reasons. I was just this mobile quarterback with this great arm, throwing left-handed, just seemed to effortlessly get the ball out quickly, seemed to have good, conceptualization of where the receivers were and when to throw it. I mean, he felt like a revelation, but I don't want Ramsey's performance to get lost in that shuffle. I think you mentioned, obviously, your feelings on Penix earlier on. Elsewhere on the field, Cole Guest was named the starter in the absence of Morgan Ellison, and I think he got injured. He Guest 5 rushes, 17 yards, didn't look that bad, but he came out in the second quarter, I think it was, and never came back. Meanwhile, Stevie Scott came in and looked really good. 3.5 yards a carry, maybe that's not as good as you'd like to see. And his longest rush was only 9 yards, but it was a very steady kind of workload that you saw out of Stevie Scott. And that does bode well, I think, for what he might do moving forward.
We never really had a series where it felt like every year it feels like we have those series where we just can't get a run going. And I will say, like you said, Stevie Scott, 3.5 yards a carry is not amazing, but every run was like moving forward, which is very as an IU football fan over years, it seems like there's always those series where we just get stopped, 1st and 10, and then it's like 2nd and 11 and 3rd and 12. And it felt like we were always at least gaining 1 or 2 yards, which was kind of a nice but odd feeling.
Yeah. A couple of other notable performances on offense for this IU team. Reese Taylor didn't get that many handoffs, but 3 carries for 40 yards. This is a guy who, first he was going to play defensive back, and then he was going to be a backup quarterback, and now apparently he's going to be a running back and also catch balls. He had the 3 carries. He averaged 13.3 yards a carry. He had a 32-yard run. He also caught 2 balls for 12 yards. This guy has secret weapon written all over him. He looks incredibly versatile. I wouldn't be shocked to see him in some game in his career play 4 positions because he can also play quarterback. So that was nice to see.
Did he have 2 tackles? His stat line shows 2 solo tackles.
Yeah, he probably did. I think he played 3 positions. And I was talking with one of the friends of the podcast who asked me if I could remember the last time a player had played 3 different positions in the same game. I can't think of one. So it's interesting the potential future
Randall L.
you've got with even Randall L. He
receiver quarterback, but didn't really.
He never played defense.
Yeah,
so I'm really interested about Reese Taylor. I've heard all kinds of good things, but normally coaching staffs are hesitant to get those kind of guys all over the field like that. And the fact that they felt okay about doing that with him really does get me excited. Receiving wise, Donovan Hale.
That was my shout out. He looked great.
Where did that come from? It's awesome. But you look at Donovan Hale last year, his total on the season, he had 5 catches for 67 yards in the Ohio State game, and then he just kind of fell off the map. And he's already got more than half of the catches that he had in 2017 this year. 4 catches, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns, a couple of really good catches, including that first touchdown in the end zone where he caught that lofted ball that was coming in from Peyton Ramsey. So he looked really good. Luke Timian looked really good. Nick Westbrook, I thought, was fine. I think, obviously FIU was blanketing him to a large degree and was giving a lot of attention to him all over the field, as they should. But really, I mean,
is Luke Timian like a future slot receiver for the Patriots?
I mean, he has that feel.
He really does, doesn't he?
He does. And I mean, it's obviously, we talked about this in the preseason. People were asking about, okay, what's the depth look like at receiver? And this is where one of the areas I wasn't concerned. We talked about this. There always seems to be somebody coming back either from injury, as you have with Donnie Hale, or somebody just coming up out of the woodwork like Ty Freifogel, who also had a good game, where the IU, just for whatever reason, seems to be able to self-replenish. I was also pretty pleased with what we saw to Peyton Hendershot in terms of getting himself open for potential passes. That was nice to see.
Whop Phillier had a nice.
Whop Phillier looked fine. I mean, he only caught 2 balls, but I mean, 28 receptions. There's only so many to go around. So defensively, you look across the board, and obviously Jonathan Crawford stuck out, forces a fumble, recovers the fumble, and also has the interception that he returns for the touchdown. That's a big play for him. It was definitely a bit of a sketchy game for the defense in terms of what they were able to do. We talked about that already. And it's going to be touch and go with the defense this year. The youth of the defense.
That's not good.
It's not good, but this is where Tom Allen's reputation as a defensive guru has to be, I guess, reasserted. Yeah. He's shown just what he did at IU the first year that he was here, that he can come in and make a big difference with a group that was very troubled statistically. They're going to have to figure it out pretty fast with this defense, because once they get past the Ball State game, the difficulty level ratchets up significantly. But I think that there was enough positive there that there'll be something to build on, and they'll be able to show the tape from this game, and they'll be able to say, look, there's some issues in terms of what's going on. I was a little bit concerned. The penalties that Ashawn Riggins had, I think he had 3 penalties on the game, and that's supposedly your best defensive back. Marcelino Ball seemed to struggle at times. We didn't hear much out of TJ Roof all game. At least I didn't hear his name get called that often. There were certainly things that you would like to see get better, and you would have hoped that they would have been better already, given who IU was playing in this game. But overall, they did enough to get the job done. And, after getting gashed on that first drive, they stabilized a bit. I mean, it wasn't a situation where they were just letting them go up and down the field every single time. They did manage to get a little bit of stability, and they got some stops. Maybe not as many stops as you'd like, but they got stops when you would absolutely need them to get stops.
Yeah, that first drive was the one that gave me the willies, because that's just like they were running. They looked awful.
It was the second drive, because the first drive had the fumble, but the second drive.
Second drive, I mean, it's often an interception, and they just drive against us, and we're like, I mean, we're swapping guys out, like we're tied. It's like, what the hell's going on? Like, it's 5 minutes in, and we already look gassed. Like that's where I was a little bit panicked. But like you said, we righted the ship. We never really, put our stamp on things, or really, kind of, the defense had a couple opportunities there where they could have really closed the game out in the fourth quarter. They didn't. I guess the positive way to look at it is I feel like we did that a couple games last year, like at Virginia, and you and I got excited about that, and it led to a better defense, but it wasn't like that was a harbinger of us having a lockdown defense all year. So, maybe, let's hope they can take this and learn with it, and, move on and get better.
Couple of comments in the chat that we've got going on. We're doing this live. Thanks to those of you who have tuned in. We really do appreciate it. And then we're also playing this as a podcast later. So obviously you're not in chat right now if you're listening on the podcast.
And quick plug. Keep on CrimsonCast, our Twitter account. I watched you do a halftime show on Periscope, which is really good, from Dunn Meadow. So, check all kinds of content.
Yeah, I got a couple IU Sports Media kids to join me. Jack Grossman and Michael Ramirez were nice enough to join me.
That was good.
The Dunn Meadow watch party, which was a lot of fun. There were probably about 150, 200 kids out there. It was good to see.
For just a real quick inside baseball, is actually we have a fire pit in our backyard. We had the fire pit going. I'm watching the game on my iPad, just doing some fire with the boys. And then I see the tweet. I'm like, I pull it up and like get Periscope going. I had like my phone on Periscope next to my iPad, and my wife Marcia just kind of turns around. She's like, "Is Galen on CBS Sports?" Like, yes. she thought like you were on CBS Sports then. I was like, "Oh yeah, Galen's the big time."
I don't think CBS Sports Network is the big time. Let's be realistic here. But anyway, some comments in the chat. Matt Uhl, defense was average, offense was exciting. DL was getting stood up by FIU's O-line. Reese Taylor really did well to play both sides of the ball. I love our young players this year. Patrick McGowan on the flip side thought the defensive line played well early, but wasn't able to put pressure on FIU quarterbacks at all in the second half. They really didn't put pressure on them in the first half either. We talked about that at halftime, how there were zero pressures on FIU's quarterback at all in the first half from this IU defense. Patrick also notes, though, that they played a ton of true freshmen in this game, and they did, on defense specifically. And that, look, we knew that there was going to be this kind of restocking process that was going to happen. And, you know, as tough as it is to play true freshmen on offense, I think it's even harder on defense because you're not used to schemes. You're certainly not normally physically ready to get up and play as a true freshman. Like, it's just, there's too much work to overcome, even if you graduate in December and get here in January. That's still a lot of ground to make up. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on, because this IU team defensively is going to have to get better. You know, they're going to play some teams, even in that middle tier of games that we've talked about. They're going to be able to put points on the board, whether it's Purdue or whether it's Maryland, as we saw today. They put 32 up on a mediocre Texas team, or an Iowa. Like that, there's going to be a lot of need to get better quickly for those freshmen. So it is a good thing, I guess, that they did get some playing time. Some other comments from the chat that were noteworthy. Let's see. The defensive statistics is from Matt Uhl. May look worse than last year. We did force more turnovers, or at least take the ball away on an FIU miscue. It is a little bit of both. I mean, the 2 turnovers were legitimate takeaways.
Yeah.
The fumble by the FIU quarterback on the read option, that was just kind of fortunate that Niall Sykes was there to fall on the ball. But, you know, it is, you gotta pick those up. Like you get those regardless of what you're doing, I guess. Some other items, Mighty Midget 567, they gave up some big plays. Defensively, yes, they gave up some big plays. And I think you're going to get that early on. There's probably going to be some big plays given up in that Virginia game too. You know, the question is going to be, can the offense put it together fast enough that they can score enough points to give the defense time to season themselves and mature? And yeah, I think they've got they certainly seem to have the tools to do so from what we're seeing, at least so far. Like, they know there seem to be some running backs in the stable that can do things. There certainly are receivers that can catch the ball, and they seem to have 2 legitimate quarterbacks that can throw the ball.
But do we have 2 for the entire season? Like, I mean, this is a question I have. Well, like, you play Penix next week, and he looks good. Sorry.
Here's the thing. So this was something Matt Uhl also questioned. Said, were you hesitant to play Penix given the Pandora's box possibility if you perform too well? No. Here's the thing. When it was announced that Ramsey was going to be the starter, I think I took that as saying, well, Penix isn't good enough to start right now. And so at that point, you're thinking, well, okay, if Ramsey is capable of playing at a high enough level, let's go ahead and see if we can get through a full season where the Penix doesn't play that often and they go ahead and use the red shirt. But what I saw tonight with Penix really moved me from that sounds stupid, I know, but it did. It moved me from a football perspective. Like, I think I put this on the Twitter feed. Our passing game looked vital for the first time since like 2015, you know, when Nate Sudfeld graduated. It felt like, wow, you know, passes are being completed. They can try to go downfield. There's a zip to the ball that just hasn't been there either with Richard Lego or with Peyton Ramsey. And again, this is not a criticism of Ramsey. It's more just a realization that Ramsey doesn't have the kind of arm strength or maybe even field command that you need in order to really make the passing game dynamic. And it's easy to look at that as a criticism, but it's really more just a realization of what a person's skill set happens to be. And I feel like, you know, when I was concerned about using this as one of the potential 4 games for Penix, because I didn't think he was going to look that good. But now that he looks that good, I wouldn't be shocked to see him starting full time, like halfway through the season, if not sooner, because I think it's going to be really, really hard to keep him off the field. And my stance on, two quarterbacks and rotations. I just think it doesn't work. And what I saw tonight, and maybe against better competition, this will change. But what I saw tonight, it felt like everything that Peyton Ramsey could do or was being asked to do, Michael Penix could do better. And I think that is going to be really interesting to watch here over the first month or so of the season to see how that plays out on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only question is like, how badly do you want that red shirt?
I don't. I think, burn the red shirt. It's fine. It at the end of the day, if he's that, and this was the argument before, and we were a little bit like questioning, okay, why isn't he starting if he's that good? But if the idea is, okay, we're just going to bring him in gradually and not throw everything on him at once, that makes some more sense. I think if he's as good as he looked tonight, and I think tonight, given the fact we saw a decent amount of both of those players, then it makes sense to play him, and it makes sense to just not worry about the red shirt. And, ultimately, I think his developmental curve, if it continues to go the way that we would hope it to, is going to end up being a situation where he just eclipses everybody else on the depth chart.
Yeah, because I think if we see him against Virginia and he looks the same or shows even a little bit of progression, I think you're at a point where it's like you really need to look at this is probably like you said, like this is where they're probably going to cross over very quickly this season, and the red shirt probably doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Patrick asked, problem with that idea or that thought for Penix, it's one thing to do it in an empty stadium at FIU. It's another to do it versus 108,000 fans at Ohio State. That's fair. But, I mean, do you really think Peyton Ramsey's going to react better in that situation than Michael Penix? It's possible, but I think that's why you have both quarterbacks, I guess, at this point, is that you do have somebody that maybe is a little more maybe calmer. Nothing that we saw out of Penix tonight would have indicated he wasn't calm. I mean, he didn't make any bad throws. He threw, certainly one less interception. And I mean, Ramsey had a couple of other balls that I didn't think were placed particularly well.
And I would say, I don't, inherently I don't disagree with the comment, but, kind of pushing back a little bit is we really don't need a quarterback who can win games on the road against 102,000 people. I mean, honestly, for us to get what we want to get done in a season to get 6 or 7 wins, like we don't have to win at Ohio State. Like we look at the schedule, like if we win all the games we're supposed to, none of them are at Penn State or at Ohio State. Like, honestly, our biggest problem has been winning games like this and winning games at home against Virginia. Like, and then we just need a quarterback. Like, so I mean, it's kind of a dicky answer, but honestly, we don't need a quarterback at all who can win those games at this point at where IU is. Like, if he's awful on the road like we only played 2 games with over 100,000 people on the road, or I guess 3. And I'm fine losing all those. If we can win the rest, that's gravy for me.
No, there's something to be said for that. It is more the question of does Penix give you a better chance at home against Iowa or on the road at Minnesota, where there probably aren't going to be that many people in the stands? And that is an open question, and I think we'll get that solved a little bit more. I will be interested to see how he does in a slightly more competitive road environment, whether it's, say, Rutgers or the aforementioned Minnesota game. That will be an interesting test. A couple other questions here in the chat. This from Marie Pavlov. Outside of the IU game, what was your take on the other games around the Big Ten from this week, especially Ohio State and Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State, Illinois, Michigan State? It was an interesting week. I'll say this. I think that from the standpoint of how the Big Ten plays out, it's clear to me that Ohio State's the most talented team in the conference, and they look mad right now. And I mean, look, all the stuff with Urban Meyer didn't really affect what was going to go on with Ohio State on the field. I mean, that I really like the first 3 games they've got, even though TCU at least has a pulse, we weren't going to see very much. But I think that, Ohio State definitely proved that they're going to be very difficult for any of the teams in the Big Ten East to play.
Don't get injured when we play them mode at this point.
Right, exactly.
We play them. It's just we'll get there, no injuries, and I'm good.
Yeah, no. As we're taping this, Michigan has scored a touchdown on Notre Dame. There's 2 minutes left in that contest. I think Notre Dame is still going to win. Michigan hasn't played terrible. They had a bad start to the game, but they've played okay given what Notre Dame seems to be a more talented team. They've at least stuck in the game. They've gotten back within 7. Penn State and Michigan State. Whew, I guess I'm gonna chalk it up to early season jitters, but I think you got to look at those two teams and say they are not the world beaters that many people thought they were coming into the season. That said, I think this IU team is too young to really give any of those teams a real run for their money. I've said this before. I felt like IU blew a golden opportunity to finally pick up a victory against Michigan last year because I didn't think that Michigan team was very good. And I think that bore itself out throughout the course of the season. I think if the IU Michigan game was at Memorial Stadium this year, they'd have a fairly good chance at a victory, but since it's on the road, it's a problem. And, Michigan State, I have a hard time believing that they are as bad in terms of their defense as they looked in that game versus Utah State. I feel like they're going to be able to fix some of that stuff, but I do think the door's cracked a little bit for IU in terms of what they might be able to do in that, in a circumstance where they're playing Michigan State. You get a good crowd, maybe you get a night game. Michigan State's on the road. It's not inconceivable that if their defense is Civ-like and IU's defense can grow up some in the next couple of weeks, that they could give that Michigan State team a little bit of a game. I think that there's a better chance of that than Penn State, who I think will right the ship by the time IU plays them. That's the big difference between playing in like late September versus playing a team in late October.
I know we play them at the end, but what were your thoughts on Purdue? Because I feel like Purdue kind of let a possible opportunity slip where they could have beaten North. I mean, again, beating Northwestern it's not like them beating Wisconsin or somebody, but it's still like that felt like a win that they let kind of slip away.
No, I think it was, and I think that Purdue. We've talked about this. It was a very mixed bag for that Purdue team because on the one hand they let it slip through their fingers, but it's more like they shoved it out of their own fingers. 3 interceptions in the first half.
Yeah.
They get that stupid penalty at the end of the game that basically salts the game away for Northwestern. So you can look at all that and say, okay, this Purdue team's got some problems. But the flip side of it is they came back twice in that game and had a chance at the end if they didn't commit that dumb penalty to put themselves in a position to possibly win the game. And so I really look at it and I say, the jury's still out on Purdue. I think, again, Jeff Brom will do a lot of good things with that team. That the one thing about that team is they got a pretty tough schedule. Not as tough as Indiana's schedule, but it's a pretty tough schedule. How will that wear on a young team throughout the course of the season? And what shape will they be in when they get to the end of the season? And so that's really what IU needs to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And Michigan just lost to Notre Dame.
Did they just lose?
They fumbled it away.
Okay. I'm watching on Amazon.
Oh, sorry. Don't mean to.
I mean, it's too late now.
Anyway, maybe they didn't. I don't know. Maybe it's under review.
Stop. Chris Cason in chat says, a Georgia fan here. Hope you guys have a great year. Thank you, Chris. We hope you have a great year as well.
Thanks.
Please beat Alabama for everybody.
By the way, enjoy your basketball coach. Let us know how that goes for you.
Well, yeah.
Better you than us.
Anyway, quick thoughts as we wrap things up. IU plays Virginia next week. Virginia did win today. They beat a 1AA school, Richmond, fairly handily, but it was Richmond. What's your thoughts on that game? Any clarity? Do you feel better about IU's chances going into it now than you did before today started?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I feel I'd say I feel about what I felt. So no. I mean, I'm pretty much exactly the same.
That's a great answer.
Yes, but no, but maybe. So maybe. No, I mean, I think I feel good about the game, I guess is my answer, but I feel about the same as I did going into this. I do think what is nice, the more I've been thinking about it, I think it's going to be kind of a fun atmosphere. I think having the new stadium, seeing it enclosed, I'm more excited about our offense. Like, this is a complete reversal now. Like, I think we have a lot of fun, exciting new weapons on our offense. I'm excited to see play. I'm now back to being nervous about our defense, which is kind of odd because the last 2 years, it's been kind of the opposite where our offense has been a complete cluster and our defense has actually been kind of fun to watch. And so, it gives me the willies because we've lived that for 15 years of having kind of a fun, exciting offense and a defense that can't hold anybody, and that never seems to work out. The only hope here is that, maybe we can get our defense back to form. But I will say, between Penix, Hale, Scott, our offense has some pretty cool things going on for it that I'm excited to see. And I think with the new stadium, coming off a win is obviously helpful. And I hope it's as exciting and night game. I hope it's as exciting an atmosphere as I hope it's. I mean, I'm going down there next week. I'm bringing my son, bringing my neighbor and his son. Like we're excited for it. So I'm fired up for it. I feel like right now we are going to be 3-0 going into that Michigan State game. Like after seeing this, I feel comfortable that this team has what it takes to go 3-0 into that Michigan State game. So that's where I guess I feel a little bit better.
They've suckered you in, Scott. It's great. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, I will say the offense. We didn't mention them yet for whatever reason, but the offensive line played really well.
Yeah.
And that really is, that was the big question. We heard all of this talk about, the offensive line was going to be much better this year, and they really did. They gave the quarterbacks time to do what they needed to do in the backfield. They did IU get sacked on? I think there were maybe 2 sacks in the game. Like it was pretty consistently. Both Ramsey and Penix had time to do what they needed to do. There were lanes open for the running backs. There was a lot of rotation going on the offensive line. The John Punt Twitter account did a nice job of kind of calling out the rotations on the offensive line. It was interesting. You should go back and look at their Twitter feed and see what they were talking about. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the offense, it's like we're back in 2015 again, where the offense looks dynamic and interesting and the defense kind of frightens you. But that said, I don't think the 2015 defense had 3 takeaways in a game,
right?
Or if they did, it was a very rare occurrence. So it's a small fish, FIU, but I think there's enough seeds there that I agree with you. The idea that they're going to be able to go in, play that Virginia game, it's probably going to be about, I'm guessing, 45,000 people in the stands for that game. I'm guessing not a complete sellout, but I think there'll be enough of a cool atmosphere that they'll be able to carry the day. And they get through that, if they can then beat Ball State, you have to like that momentum going into the end of the month. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm really fast. I think there's some fascinating things to watch develop.
Yeah.
The quarterback situation is going to be fascinating to watch develop. I think the running back position is going to be fascinating to watch develop. I think seeing who emerges with the potential of having 4 really good wide receivers is really exciting. And then on the defense, I think it's just going to be a matter of who among the freshmen emerges and do we get more consistent play out of the veterans. And if that happens,
it probably won't happen for next week, but you still have Morgan Ellison's not off the team. Like at any point he could. I mean, we don't know what's going on. But
now, one thing I do want to mention, this was brought up on the CBS broadcast where
Tom Allen said he didn't know when he'd be back.
Yeah. Allen said, "Well, it's out of my hands," which
right.
Okay,
whose hands is it in then?
It's a very odd situation. But
yeah.
Jason Kennedy in the chat asks, will Fred Glass be proved correct? Will 37/69 be open all 4 lanes next weekend? You want to place a wager on this, Scott? You're the one that has to drive it.
I don't know. It's funny. I was talking to another friend of mine about this, and I thought that was a very funny statement by Fred Glass, because it's like saying, I guarantee it's going to be sunny. It's like, Fred Glass, you don't work for NDOT. NDOT doesn't care. They don't, not only do they not care about IU football, they don't care about Indiana citizens, because that thing has not been open for 6 years. I don't think anybody at NDOT's like, holy shit, we got to get it open because Fred Glass, they don't care. They don't care about you or me or our kids or IU football or IU basketball. They're NDOT. They are above and they don't give an SHIT. That said, Fred Glass said it. They'll probably be open. But I don't know. I would love to think they are, but the smart money is that no, because for the last 7,000 days, if you vote no that it's going to be open, then it's good. But that comment, I'm so happy you mentioned it, cracked me up, because it's like, Fred, I love you, baby, but you got nothing in control. The one agency who isn't going to move for anybody is NDOT.
Yeah, it's like it's like yelling at the meteorologist. about the weather. It doesn't really work. So anyway, my advice to all of you, if you're going to come down, you should please come down for the Virginia game. If you're going to come down the night before, stay with a friend, stay at an Airbnb, just get yourself down here so you don't have to deal with it. If you come down, please stop by the tailgate. I'm in the green lot.
I'm gonna try and make it.
Yeah, please, you stop by. Anybody that's listening or watching, if you want to stop by, red canopy. I know that's original. I used to have a purple canopy, and then somebody broke it. But stop by. We'd love to say hi.
Anybody from NDOT want to come by? We can talk about
NDOT wants to come by. I'm happy to entertain NDOT. I'll make you a bratwurst. So anyway, Scott, this was fun. We need to do this again, and we will, I'm sure, at some point. So
I think we'll do it next week.
It'll be late since you have a long drive home after.
It won't be after the game next week. Or
no, we'll have to do it on Sunday next week, but we'll work on it. But anyway, thanks to all of you for sticking with us and for watching IU football as they knock off Florida International University by the score of 38-28. Be sure to tune in to CrimsonCast. We will have our pre-game podcast up probably Thursday night or Friday morning of this upcoming week. So be sure to listen into that on the Hoosier.com, the Indiana Rivals website. Be sure to check out all the good stuff that those folks do. Scott, always a pleasure. Folks, always a pleasure. We'll catch you on the flip side. So long, everybody.